For all those Christians who are saying that this movie was blasphemous, they completely missed the movie. They completely missed out. And for those who just watched the trailer and made a decision that the movie is blasphemous, you completely are missing out on a movie that's actually more in line with Christianity and his mindset of redemption. Now, I know this is going to be that one video where me and Christians will actually pretty much agree if you use your mind instead of using your emotions, which I know that's hard to do. So I just got back from seeing the movie The Book of Clarence. And if you don't like spoilers, you might want to stop this video right now and don't look at it, okay? Because we'll have some spoilers in it. But if you are a Christian or a non-Christian, deconstruction, if you're a history person like myself, you will enjoy this movie. If you just love a good movie that has great cinematography, great score, the acting was superb, the storyline was, if you follow the storyline and move with it as a person living a life, then you will love this movie and actually give it the credit that it should. It's, we like to say, oh, Passion of Christ, Ben-Hur, the greatest story ever told. Why can't this be one of the greatest movies that's ever been told in the Christian genre, so to speak? Why? Because it's got a bunch of black people? Is that the problem? But, so anyway, let me get to it. The movie starts out with Clarence, who is amazing. Clarence is, and I'm going to give you the historical parts as well as I go. Clarence is the twin brother of Thomas, the Apostle Thomas. If you look at Thomas' name, Didymus Judas, I think it's Didymus Judas Thomas or Didymus Thomas Judas. I forget which order it goes right now, but it means twin, right? And there are many who say that Thomas was the twin of Jesus, but instead this movie looks upon it and say that Thomas, no, he has a twin, and Clarence is Thomas's twin. And it goes through this process of a relationship, the broken relationship of Clarence and his brother Thomas, because Clarence is feeling some kind of way because Thomas left his mother while she was, he said, on her deathbed. But she obviously recovered, and he feels some kind of way about Thomas leaving the family, but he still loves his brother, and because Thomas is with Jesus, he's a little bougie with it. As many of the disciples are portrayed as they when you have that high level preacher, famous preacher, and his entourage, their mentality does have somewhat of that, an arrogance to it. But it shows how they have to bring themselves down as well, which is something that, according to your Bible, would have happened afterwards. But anyway, and it's also a great love story between Clarence and pretty much the gangster that he owed money to, and he's in love with the gangster's sister. And so he's trying to prove himself to be greater, worthy of her, but at the same time, he's also trying to take care of his mother, but he doesn't believe in himself that much. So he's, selling weed and betting and making bets and races against Mary Magdalene, which was a great telling, even though it pulls a little bit from the Catholic story of how Mary Magdalene was a whore and Jesus had to come save her, but and he does in the movie. But she wasn't that. That wasn't the case with Mary Magdalene at all. But the movie does add that element to it, just like it added in the infancy gospel of Thomas when Clarence goes to see Jesus' mother Mary in order to find out what his tricks were, because Clarence doesn't believe in God at all. He doesn't believe that there's a God that exists, and thinks that Jesus is a magician, which goes to another extra biblical text about Jesus, the magician. So what Clarence does understand is that what he knows is facts and knowledge is power, which the Gospel of Thomas, his brother, is known for his understanding in the Gnostic mindset of that the way that you achieve achieve heaven, achieve closeness to God is through knowledge. So if you read the Gospel of Thomas, you would know that, you would understand that, and that element is added in there. And with him being Thomas's brother, and Thomas is always writing down things, so knowledge is power is his call to action while he performs some fake miracles. If you understood the first century, second century time frame, but especially during that first century, during the time frame of Nero, so actually first century BCE and first century CE, one of the biggest problems that was going on during that time frame is that the Jewish people were looking for a Messiah. And there were many people who were claiming to be a Messiah. The character in the story, in this movie, Barabbas, who his part was great. I loved him in this movie. Barabbas was claiming to be a Messiah because in the Hebrew, the Messiah was going to be someone who led a war effort against the Romans in the same way that the Maccabees led a war effort against the Greeks a few hundred years earlier. So during the early first century, during that time frame that this story is encapsulated in, there were actually many people who were trying to be the Messiah to the Jewish people while they were under Roman occupation. So it's not unheard of that Clarence, as seeing as he was desperate to take care of his mom and he wanted to be more and saw the power of Jesus, that he would mimic or copy or create his own version of trying to be a Messiah. And the Romans had an edict that they were to crucify all the Messiahs. All the Messiahs. Now I'm not going to spoil one part too much, but Benedict Cumberbatch is in this movie, and it's funny, but it's poignant at the same time in how society looks upon his character in the beginning of the movie and at the end of the movie. So his part was great, so that's what I'm saying. Hands down, everybody did a great job in this movie. But Clarence goes through this process of believing that he has to have facts to believe in this God. And then it does get to a point where he's given that facts. And when he's given that facts, he then believes. He then believes in this God because he knows it. And that is the only part that that's the part that Christians actually most likely will have problems with, because he was a person that in order for him to believe in Jesus and believe in God, he had to know it instead of believing it. And that may be found offensive to some Christians, because most Christians today are just faith-based and have no facts, because many of the things that I've talked about as far as the Gospel of Thomas, the infancy Gospel of Thomas, and the Gospel of Judas is in there. Many of you haven't read those, so you wouldn't understand the parts that they throw in there like that. Now, another great part of this movie was the demonstration of how an occupying nation treats the people that they're oppressing, which is very much relatable to how black people in America have suffered and are still suffering under the police brutality in America, the oppressive nature of the American society towards black people. And this is why I believe if I went and looked at a bunch of reviews of this movie by Caucasian Americans, they're going to not get it and see it as a bad movie or something like that, because those parts will make you look at yourself, and they don't want to look at themselves. But even in this movie, there are aspects of it that should make almost everybody look at themselves to a certain degree. Like there's a portion of it where the woman that Clarence is in love with and his mother is having a conversation, and they're talking about how Clarence is an eagle but thinks that he's like a pigeon or something, or he has a greatness in him, but he can't see it for himself. And I think that was a point that I think most people can identify with, because most people never see and never understand the true ability that they have within themselves to be great and settle for a lesser value, right? Now his mother is talking to him for the person who can see that the only way they can help them is to accept them where they are and let them find it for themselves. And there's a constant theme about growth in the movie, right? So the thing about it, many Christians are going to have problems and think that he's blaspheming against Jesus because he's imitating Jesus. But think about Paul. Paul had to go through a transition where something had to happen directly for him to know in order for him to be converted. So why is there any difference with anyone else? But I think it's great on the historicity of how first century Judea was at the time frame under Roman occupation, and the fact that there were many people claiming to be messiahs. He does find Jesus at the end of the movie, and that's fine. I don't believe in Jesus, but it was fine for the movie itself. I don't think Christians should avoid this movie, but it was a really good movie. Just as a movie, I just looked at it as a movie itself. It was a really good movie, and it was one of the most historically accurate types of movie for that era. Not saying Jesus was the miracle maker, but it was a really good movie for that era. Y'all have a great day.